Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. You're watching Strategize Creations, and on my channel I'm sharing my sewing journey and a lot of other things that are related to sewing, and also some faith-based content every once in a while. So I told you all that I was going to come back with another video focusing and talking more about what could Joann Fabrics closing really mean for us sewists, right? Like, is there some good that can come out of Joann Fabric closing? And I believe for those of us who really desire to be a lot more strategic in our sewing, there can be some good. So let's talk about it. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you all that I will not miss Joann Fabrics, because that would be not true at all. There were a couple of great things about Joann Fabric. One was being able to go into Joann Fabrics and touch the fabric, get a feel for the fabric, you know, be stimulated by all the colors and the textures and things like that. And not just that, like, Joann was just the place where it was just like an overabundance amount of just fabric, right? There are still other stores around, but nothing not quite like Joann Fabrics. Then Joann Fabrics had really great pattern sales. It was nice to be able to go into Joann Fabric and sit at their table and go through the catalog and then go through the drawers, pulling out patterns, reading the patterns, that touchy-feely type stuff. Well, that's not going to be able to happen any longer, but we can still go to places like simplicity.com and purchase our patterns for good sale prices as well. And I think what I will miss the most about Joann Fabric, and I think this might be true for the entire community, is having a place to go where we could almost be guaranteed to grab last minute notions and supplies, right? So there will be no more of, oh man, I forgot this, I forgot that, let me run to Joann. I ran out of fabric, let me run to Joann. Like, that's not gonna exist any longer. So those are the three major things I'm gonna miss most about Joann Fabric. But there's one thing that I do feel like the closing of Joann will do for many of us in the sewing community, and especially for those of us who are just starting out in sewing. And that is learning how to be a lot more strategic in our sewing plans, in our projects, what we buy and how much of what we buy. I think these are things that we may have lost sight of when going to Joann Fabrics, because there is so much there to choose from. And I know I have been guilty. I will be the first to admit to you all that I will go to Joann with a list. However, many times I go with a list and then leave with a list and some extra stuff. The extra stuff is not always what I need right away. However, it happens. It would happen. So now that Joann Fabric is closing, we're gonna have to really learn how to be a lot more thoughtful, a lot more strategic, because we're not gonna have the ability to go out into a big store like Joann and get items that we need for our projects. Now, again, in some communities, there are other stores that we can go to, great stores that have great types of fabrics and notions, but not every town, every community has that availability. So especially for those who are living in areas where the selection of sewing stores or stores you can buy notions and patterns from is not wide, we will have to really be thinking about, okay, how can I be thoughtful and intentional about what I want to sew? So I'm going to offer you five tips on what I think you can do, especially if you are just starting out on your sewing journey and really getting into sewing and got excited and now you lost Joann. What can you do to make sure that what you are doing is strategic, intentional, and thoughtful? And not just that, maybe for those of us who are into sewing and have been doing it for a while, maybe this is a time where you can also start to think about what it is you need to do, what you can do to be more strategic and thoughtful about your sewing plans. Okay, so I'm now going to get into the good stuff, which are the 5 steps that I think will help us be a lot more strategic in our buying, a lot more strategic in our planning of sewing and things like that. These are actually things that I will be a lot more thoughtful about when I'm doing my projects. I think I'm already pretty much a planner, but sometimes, like I said, when I would go to the stores, I would kind of get off track with that sometimes. And now I'm back again. I keep saying it, Joann is closing. They are already no more pretty much. I need to be thinking about these steps as well. So here they go. The first thing I would strongly recommend is that we all do a much better job at reading our pattern envelopes. And I made a mistake in one of my makes. I think it was the green dress from Vogue. I can't remember. No, I'm sorry. It was a simplicity pattern I'm gonna work on pretty soon, where I underestimated the amount of fabric I think I needed for that. So it's really going to be important that we read our pattern envelopes and consider fully the amount of fabric that we're going to need, as well as the notions that we're going to need. Now, I will say this, but I also want to caveat this with saying sometimes we may need to buy, maybe when it comes to notions, a little bit more than what the envelope might require. Because if you are working on something and you mess it up and you don't already have, you know, what you need in terms of an extra, it would be nice to have like another one, you know, ready to go on hand. Now, for those of us who've been sewing for a while, that may not be a problem, but for those of us who are just starting out on our journey, it might not be a bad idea just to have an extra one or two of whatever it is that you need to finish out your make. Now, I know a lot of people don't do this. I've heard a lot of people that have been sewing for a very long time say they no longer do this. But I'm going to say, especially for beginners, make sure that you are reading your instructions. Read your instructions. And that's really, really important, because not only are you going to know exactly what is involved in making that garment, what skills you might have to, you know, learn before, or techniques you might have to learn before you make that garment, but sometimes you might find that there are other hidden notions that are referenced in the instructions. For instance, if the garment is saying to do a gathering stitch, there are several different ways you can do a gathering stitch. One of the ways is you can use yarn. Now, I've never used yarn, but I hear that that's a way that you can actually do a nice gathering stitch. If you don't have yarn, you gotta find a different way to do your gathering stitch. So make sure that you're reading your instructions, especially things like stay tape that you might need to stabilize your knits or curve, or if it asks you to maybe do a slip stitch and you don't have the needles that you need to do a slip stitch, you're going to be at a loss for a little bit until you're able to actually go out and purchase those items. Now, a needle, you can get that from Walmart, you know, maybe even a Target if you decide to go to a Target or something like that. However, what you don't want is to be prepared to make your garment, open your instructions, get to an instruction, and don't have what you need to do it. I would also say to consider investing in a sewing planner. Now, this might be a little more for those of us who don't like to plan out our sewing or plan and write out things that we're doing as we're working through our projects, but I do think having a sewing planner will help keep the sewing on track. It will also, depending on whatever planner you get, help you to budget out what you need. It's going to have you list out what notions you need, so that when you're able to make your orders online, you're able to just go to your planner, you can look at what you need and go ahead and place your order. Many types of sewing planners out there on the market, but if you just maybe just do a quick Google search on sewing planner, you'll see many that will come up. If you go to Amazon, you'll also see several types of planners that will come up, so you can take your pick of what you think might work best for you. When I first started out, I did not have a planner. I ordered two, didn't use them. I actually ended up making my own little template that I used, because there were certain things I wanted to capture in each project that one planner just did not provide for me. So just think about what it is you want to capture in your plans. Definitely things like your fabric and your notions, maybe your measurements and things like that, because that's going to really help you be strategic and very thoughtful and keep you on track. 4, I will tell you, if you are going to miss the essence of going to the store, walking through, touching the fabric, stretching the fabric, putting it on your skin, that is going to be a loss, unfortunately, but you can always order swatches whenever you go online and you are looking for fabric, consider whether or not that fabric is available in a swatch before you actually purchase it. It won't be the same as going to the store, looking at a bolt of fabric and getting the full feel of the fabric. But if you order a swatch, that might help you. I also want to recommend a book that I purchased from Amazon some time ago, and it's called Fabric for Fashion, the Swatch Book. And it's a really, really useful book. And what it does is gives you kind of some of the history of the making of different types of fabrics and what it entails to get the fibers to come together and things like that. But it also gives you sample swatches of different types of fabric. And actually, let me show you that book. I do have it. Give me 1 second. So this is the front of the book, and it's called, like I said, Fabric for Fashion. It's the swatch book, and it's by Clive Hallett and Amanda Johnston. I referenced this book on my channel before, but it's a really, really great book. And what I'm talking about in terms of the swatches, it will give you sample swatches of all types of fabrics, right? So this page here are different types of cottons. This page here, more cotton. These are some satins, some different types of wool. But it gives you a little bit of history, not history, but a little bit about the fiber, you know, where it comes from and things like that. This is more silk. So it really gives you a really good foundation for what you might be looking for in terms of a fabric. So again, I highly recommend this book if you feel like you might want just a really quick, you know, guide or handbook right at your fingertips on what the fiber might feel and look like. Consider again this book here. The very last thing that I would recommend, and I started hearing a lot of people talk about this online recently, and I never knew it even existed, but there is a Gutermann thread chart that you can purchase from Walwack. I did purchase one. I haven't gotten it in the mail just yet, but I trust that it'll be here soon because Walwack has really fast shipping on their items. But this chart would be really useful for buying thread. So when I would purchase my fabric, I would always purchase the fabric, and then I would also go right over to the thread rack and get at least 3 spools of matching thread. I probably could have done 2, but I felt like 3 would have been good enough. I would maybe go through 1.5 and still have, you know, 1.5 left. But again, that's probably not gonna happen as easily now because going to a store such as Joann, you know, and being able to do that for me will not exist as much. So I would highly recommend that you consider going to Walwack and ordering their Gutermann thread chart. This way, once you get your fabric, you can then open your chart. You can decide which color fabric, which color thread would be the best color for your make. And then you can decide if you want to purchase that thread from Walwack or some other vendor that sells Gutermann thread. So these are all the things I think will be very helpful for those of us who are seeking and have a desire to be a lot more strategic in how we sew, what we buy, and why we buy. So I do hope this is helpful, and let me know if you are already employing any of these tips in your sewing. If there's one tip that you find that works best for you, or one that you might need a little bit more push to get under your belt, let's talk about that below. And I want to thank you for watching my channel. If you have not yet liked and subscribed, please do so. That way you're able to catch all of my sewing content and be a part of my community of people who love the skill of sewing and learning together. So until we come together again, take care and God bless you all.